So, on today's episode of some new content format that seems to be quite... this crosses 3 different media distributions. Epicenter, what was your thing again?
Decipher.
Fuck, I'll say that again.
What's my own thing called? I don't know. Okay, presented this thing you're working on, and the thing I don't have a name yet. But
No, so the third web. We'll actually keep that. That's B-roll.
The third wave.
That's a really good name.
The third wave.
Third web.
Web.
It's a good name. It's a good name.
Yeah, I like it.
Thanks. It took me a really long time to come up with. But anyway, so let's talk about.
Gavin's going to sue you for that one.
Is he?
Well, Web 3,
Probably
the third
will.
web. I mean,
I've been hearing really. No, I'm not even going to say that. No gossip. Let's talk about Devcon 3.
okay.
So we've got an incredible panel here, made of absolute media luminaries. So Devcon 3. What were you guys expecting? Let's do round the circle. We'll just do you guys. I'll play moderator.
Sure. Well, I'm a software developer, so interested in the technology behind Ethereum, and the last 9 months have kind of been crazy because of this whole ICO mania. And I think for the most part that the Ethereum Foundation did a pretty good job of filtering a lot of that out. So I was pretty interested just to get back to kind of the basics of talking with people about the tech, the core infrastructure, and kind of seeing where the momentum is manifesting itself in that respect.
Yeah, so I remember I was at the Devcon 0 sort of, right? So I remember sort of from that, but then I wasn't at 1 and 2. I mean, Devcon 0 was like 50 people, right? It was a tiny thing. So this is my first sort of, proper Devcon. And I was expecting, it's just a lot of this energy and exuberance, and like .com style, Plus with now everybody having way too much money. I was also wondering, sort of, okay, what kind of ridiculous displays of wealth are we gonna see? So far, not that much actually.
People have bought airplanes.
People have got airplanes with like Taylor.
Yeah, one guy.
Yeah, I've heard about videos being filmed on airplanes. So, but yeah, I mean, I think I thought the conference was, it's kind of still what it used to be. I mean, if you look at very technical, just what's going on with Ethereum development.
I've been a regular at Devcon since Devcon 1. I've attended the previous 2. I had low expectations coming into this one because I felt the previous Devcon was kind of repetitive. Like Devcon 1 and 2 were like very similar. I came here just to find unexpected corners of the ICO space. Maybe there's some interesting project we haven't interviewed. Maybe there's an interesting investment opportunity I could find for myself. It hasn't turned out that way yet.
This is my very first Devcon. Didn't do any of the other ones. Coincidentally, it's the furthest one from where I'm at, right? So, but I mean, I really came with no expectations. I tried to just have an open mind and not expect anything else than just,
It's very Buddhist of me.
I know. I'm trying to be in the moment right now. Like, I mean, no, honestly, I mean, it's either just laziness or perhaps it was intentional. But I came to. My intention, however, was to sort of discover the more technical side of Ethereum. Working on more of the sort of enterprise side of blockchain. I don't have a lot of opportunities to spend a lot of time like digging into the technical stuff on Ethereum, which I find sometimes I'm lacking. So that's why I came. So I felt that it was on that front it was probably what I was expecting it to be, kind of technical. But I also am surprised to see there's not this like, big exuberance of like ICO mania. At least people are not expressing it.
They are.
They are like Discord. They're not going on stage.
There was only one Snapchat filter for an ICO, which is way less than I was expecting. So,
So what do you guys like sense about the whole day?
I think like in some ways it's classic Ethereum in that there's these like pockets of brilliance that will emerge where you'll go to a talk and be like, this is completely revolutionary, but it's so like mixed in a mixed bag of, you know, like technical mumbo jumbo that you can't really wrap your head around, or like, you know, like kind of incompetence of like, hey, the audio is not working in this talk, and that's like sometimes like I guess you kind of like, at least for me, like you're almost like wanting Ethereum to transcend that and become like these like Apple keynotes. It's like super well done and organized, and it just like it's just not. It's like that's what Ethereum is. It's like this like really interesting mess where you have to kind of find like the interesting stuff, and like so far day one of Devcon like hits all those beats for me. So like there's really cool stuff going on, but it's like you gotta find it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that stands out to me, you know, this is now the fourth Devcon in a way, sort of, third or fourth, and with this market value of 30 billion now, right? But you go there and there's still basically nothing that somebody could use. Like even us, right? Who are like, you know, engaged in this whole space and like use like, except like sending Ether around and like participating in IC, there's literally like no application that's whatsoever ready for any kind of consumer usage, right? So that's kind of remarkable. No, you can have all of this boom like without any real substance anyway. I mean, of course it's gonna come. I'm sure I expect it will come. Everybody expects it will come, but it's still nothing.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good insight. What do you think? What do you think is that's attributed to? Is it attributed to the fact that the people here are mostly very technical and that's not what they're into, or is it just because the space is not?
No, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, right? So why is it surprising?
The interesting question, I think, is like whether or not it doesn't exist or just hasn't coalesced yet. And like that's like, because you know, like you have to have like base level infrastructure at a certain level before like you're gonna get good applications.
Yeah.
And, like people have been definitely over promising things. So I think like the interesting question that I'm struggling with and trying to wrap my head around is like, where is that coalescence of like the base level protocol and the development tools, like to the point where you actually could have consumer applications? Like that's what I think is like interesting to try to like parse out of this.
What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, so the first day, I think that it was like the typical DevCon. There were lots of talks that were kind of hard to understand. A few things stood out in this particular day. So I think the biggest thing that stood out for me is Vlad's claim. I call it a claim that he now has a consensus algorithm in which you know, you can be certain that certain blocks are final while only potentially processing just one message per block. So like in traditional Byzantine consensus, BFD consensus, you always had like 3 rounds of message passing before a block could be committed. But it felt that like he has a breakthrough where like you could have consensus with only like a single round of communication. It seems to me something very fundamental. I'm not sure what it means practically in terms of performance. So that's definitely something to dig deeper. And it was also interesting that Gun Searer from Cornell kind of reaffirmed in one of the panels that Casper is getting finalized. So I'm assuming that he has some internal knowledge or more understanding of the situation. So these were some encouraging signs, but like I would personally want to explore what's really happening inside Casper. The other thing that stood out was a talk by Jason Deutsch, Truebit. So in his talk, like he said that there was in an alpha testnet, they have enough functionality to enable Dogecoin via Truebit to live on the Ethereum chain. So via Truebit, they're going to make this panoptic on a computer, validate Dogecoin transactions, and be able to move Dogecoin to Ethereum. And it seemed that it's only a few months out. So that seemed like a interesting data point. I thought Truebit would take way longer time to produce some interesting results. I also felt that Ethereum is going to come under a lot of competition. So it's quite obvious that there's lots of transaction demand. So 500, like 500,000 transactions a second per day already. That's 7 transactions a second. Probably going to hit limits pretty soon. So there's obviously very high transaction demand and very low transaction supply. So like it was interesting how in the vision that Vitalik laid out at the end, I could see that his vision is evolving to sort of offer some respite to this problem. So for the first time I was seeing that instead of like, in the Ethereum vision there was always a transition to proof of stake and then a transition to sharding. This was supposed to be sequential. But in today's vision, like what was different from last year was that like Vitalik laid out this vision where transition to proof of stake and sharding would go on in parallel, with maybe one of the key milestones in the sharding direction coming in the form of shards or blockchains that are like less secure, less decentralized, but maybe have lower gas costs, and to make them operational relatively quickly. So I could see that like change in roadmap from last year. That was also an interesting data point. So that's worth following. From the sort of vision and roadmap side, like these were sort of the interesting data points I gathered in the day. I'm also personally interested to see like what are the cool projects to interview and cool projects to maybe even speculate on, like what should be explored. I didn't find too many, like in fact most of the suggestions came from Arthur, like Definity and Singularity Net seemed to be interesting. There were a couple of others that turned out, but maybe we can get into those later.
Well, I'm glad you understood the Vlad talk. Because I was a bit at a loss there, to be honest. Overall, I think I can echo some things that you were saying. So I think from my first experience, I was expecting, perhaps content that had been slightly a bit more consumer friendly, polished, especially for the 4th Devcon. I mean, sure, there's a lot of developers here, but there were a lot of increasingly non-developers, people such as myself, although I have some technical background. I'm not an engineer. Just seeing, so for instance, I speak at insurance events, for example, right? And there's a lot of work done pre-conference with the speakers, making sure that your content will be digestible, like not only just sorting out the technical issues, but like getting your script ready, and they help you sort of become more, they help you with sort of basic public speaking stuff, and I felt that some of the speakers were lacking that ability, and it would be a great benefit to the community to be able to communicate these high technical things in a more digestible way. So that's one thing I think that was one takeaway from today. But then again, you're talking to a highly technical audience. Perhaps my expectations are a little high there.
It gets better with the 2nd and 3rd Devcon.
Yeah.
In the 1st Devcon, I was like clueless,
Okay.
And in this one, it's like things repeat, and you get the like they start to make more sense with every passing Devcon. I think.
Well, I'll see for Devcon 4 then. Some of the highlights for me today, I really like Vitalik's talk. I think that he's an excellent communicator, and so he's one of these people that have really learned the skill, I think, of being able to communicate effectively.
What did you like about the talk in particular, material-wise?
It was a good 25-minute refresher, just to get you set for the day, right, and set for the event. Just hitting those high-level points and sort of getting you ready for what was to come. And he's just a really effective communicator, so that was great. One thing that I thought was missing, and maybe it's coming in the next few days, again, I haven't really looked at the agenda, I'm so in the moment right now, is the enterprise side. The only person to speak of, say, for instance, SGX, I think today was Eamon during his talk in the breakout room, and from where I stand, I was expecting a bit more like, how can Ethereum be used in enterprise, and maybe some applications of that, right? So we haven't yet heard of Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. Maybe it wasn't one of the talks, but I wasn't at those talks. And overall, one thing that I'm sort of personally really I think needs to be improved is there needs to be a bit more diversity and gender equality in these events. That's something I keep saying, and throughout the whole day, the only two women that we had on stage were Ming from the foundation, and I forget her name, but a professor at Cornell who was moderating the panel this afternoon. And I was at an event recently in Berlin, the 9984 IPDB conference, and it was half of the speakers, a 2-day event, and half of the speakers were women, or from different ethnic backgrounds, and it really transpired in the content. Like the content was dramatically different from, say, what we have here. And
so are you saying there's a meaningful difference between content produced by men and women? And
absolutely. I mean, just the way that ideas get communicated, or the way that you approach things. It's not just men and women. It can be different cultural, ethnical backgrounds, or whatever, right? So I think there needs to be sort of a shift towards a bit more.
Why do you think do you think there's a cause behind that? Is there some cultural thing behind that? Is there a minority culture that's dominant here, that's primarily influential here?
Yeah, I think so. So like Ethereum, if you look at Ethereum, Ethereum started off feeling like a science project, right? And the kinds of people it attracted were, lack of a better word, like people who are like into science and do sciencey things, sort of nerds. And now suddenly we've gone to this stage where like that science project has become huge, but the key people are all like nerdy, that might not be the best communicators for a mass audience. So I think it's still this community still retains that flavor.
Yeah, I mean,
Devcon.
I think one thing that they also could do a lot better in is, and it speaks a little bit to diversity, but in a different way, is that this is, I mean, it's called the Ethereum Developer Conference, right? But it is really the Ethereum conference, right? There's not another conference, right? Yeah. So you come here, but then it is only developers, right? So I mean, there was like one talk about regulation.
Yeah.
But there's like so many different aspects, right? It may be social usage, or legal, and like
enterprise social good
is
tends to be really Ethereum focused as well.
I mean, there's just so many. Maybe user experience thing. There's just so many different perspectives that like one can have, or like economic, right? Like talking about Ethereum as a digital asset, all of that, and it's just not represented at all.
I would just say to that though, I think that Ethereum in general, compared to other cryptocurrencies, is doing a pretty good job of addressing that. Like the Consensus has put on 2 conferences in Ethereum in Brooklyn, which I thought had like the best girl to guy ratio of any tech conference I've ever been at, and they just did one in SF. There's also Moogie Moogie's doing the Token Summit, which is happening, which is like more focused on like tokens and the regulatory aspects around that. Consensus every year is the business conference. It does like Ethereum, so like I think that this like Devcon does tend to be like super nerdy and technical, and then that gets reflected in the culture and the lack of like mainstream appeal with some of the talks, which like I agree is like a problem. I mean, like basic stuff, like dudes have like slides that like have 80 bullet points on it, where like a 101 of like mainstreaming would be like, don't do that. But I don't know, like I think like this is like, it's not like those things don't exist. Like I think Ethereum is like actually trying to do those. So
hey, so what are we looking forward to tomorrow? And was that some Game of Thrones fan art that I just saw over here?
What?
No. What are we looking forward to tomorrow?
I'm really interested in the kind of infrastructure projects that the Ethereum Foundation is doing, like orthogonal to Ethereum. So that would include like Swarm and Whisper particularly. I want to see progress on Swarm. That project is, in my opinion, essential to like any of these decentralized applications actually working, but they're somewhat clandestine, like by intention, either because of intentional or like they're just not good at talking about what they're doing. So getting updates on Swarm will be really good. Getting updates on Whisper will be really good too. I think some sort of calm protocol, this actually, I'll touch on what I thought was my favorite talk of the day, which was Fabian Vogelsteller's talk on ERC 725, which is about Ethereum like standard for doing identity on Ethereum. So like the whole like Ethereum ecosystem got derailed by this whole token mania, but that actually started because of the ERC20 token standard, which is like a formalized standard on Ethereum that Fabian also wrote. And once you had a formalized standard, you had a bunch of people like you could make Bittrex because Bittrex knew a bunch of tokens.
You guys are cool. You can just hang out. Yeah, we are. But I mean, you're fine. Cool. So you can join us if you like.
So you could have something like Bittrex because they knew all the tokens would conform to a standard, and then once you have Bittrex, you can have mainstream usage. So like people have been talking about tokens for a while, but didn't really start until you had the ERC20 standard. So like another killer app for Ethereum is identity, and people have been talking about identity, and there's a million identity projects, but none of them have really worked. But I think that his idea is that you could have identity as a standard in Ethereum, and then you could have like very, very standard APIs that people could expect, and then you could build all these kind of identity solutions on top of it. So I think that that's going to be a killer app for Ethereum, but you need some sort of communication protocol. If you're using Ethereum addresses as your identity in your browser or whatever, you need some way to like send messages to them because you don't have their email address or something. So Whisper to me is like an essential protocol also, but again, like you don't have like good transparency into how these projects are doing, even though the Ethereum Foundation is funding them. So like I'm just very curious to get the updates on hit those beats and see where we're at with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so tomorrow there's supposed to be quite a lot of talks, so there are going to be quite a lot of talks at CK Snark, so or Zero Knowledge Proofs, so I look forward to that, and just understanding what's going on with that. And then we're also going to do like a little side event, like for Cosmos, so like Sunny's we have some talks here, so I look forward to that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I haven't seen the schedule yet, so I'm not looking forward to anything in particular. Yeah.
Cool. I'm looking forward to some of the applications, right? So tomorrow there'll be a talk by a status talk, a Melonport talk. Yeah, obviously the ZKB stuff I'm interested in as well. Hopefully it's digestible. And there's
that's like the least digestible subject.
Yeah, I know. There's another one I was really wanting to see. I forget what it is. Anyways, yeah. So I think tomorrow will be good as well. Oh yeah. Microsoft is speaking tomorrow. Harley Gray is speaking tomorrow. So
I love that guy.
Yeah.
He's the man.
Yeah. So I'll be looking forward to that. And I just, it's been great, sort of overall, I think. And I always like when I come here, so just seeing people, like I said.
Yeah.
Seeing your friends, right? And like all the cool crypto people. And so that's great. And also, I just want to point out that this is the first time that we're all sitting here. So Mayor and I just met today.
Yeah.
Wow.
It worked for 3 years.
We've been working together for like 3 years, and we just met today. So
Yeah.
it's great. And so this is the first time that we've all sat together having a conversation. We're going to be actually recording a sort of post Devcon episode after the conference, like live in a room, which is going to be the first time we've done too. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, this is going to be some interlinkable content.
yeah.
Yeah, that is actually crazy because Decipher is one of the best, or probably the best. Probably not. Probably there's just nothing else as good as Decipher at like hitting those super technical topics. And then the third web, once the Ether review, once beyond Bitcoin, is just probably the best podcast. If I'm totally honest.
Let's do a Twitter poll right now.
So if